Aloha again, everyone. My name is Rob Hack. I represent the Hawaii Pacific Export Council in Honolulu. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to helping Hawaii companies export. And just to be clear, when we talk about exporting, we're talking about sending products and services to a foreign country, not to the mainland, and certainly not to another neighbor island, but to a foreign country such as Japan or Germany or Brazil or what have you. The focus of today's meeting is exporting to Japan and through e-commerce. And we have two wonderful speakers that we'll get to in just a minute. First off, we'd like to say thank you to DBET and SBA in Washington, D.C. for the generous grant that allows us to put on these webinars and perform one-on-one company mentoring sessions. This is our first event of the calendar year. We've already had a couple in the current HiSTEP 2022 cycle, but I'd like to again thank DBET and introduce Jamie Lum from DBET, who is the program manager that oversees the HiSTEP grant. So Jamie, please introduce us a bit to HiSTEP 2022.
Mahalo, Rob, and aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And to Mark, who's in Japan, it's morning, so mahalo. Want to say thanks to Rob for putting our session together today. Today's session is part of what we call the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program, or HiSTEP. And as Rob already mentioned, it's primarily supported through a grant that we received from the SBA. The overall goal of the national program is to increase U.S. exports. And so I'm glad that Rob did emphasize that we are talking about sending product outside of the U.S., because that is what SBA wants to see. So this webinar is part of our series. There are three parts of the program. Briefly, we have our export readiness component. We have our Hawaii pavilions, and then our company assistance. So this webinar is part of what we call export readiness. The whole intent of the program is to help new to export companies, as well as companies that are already exporting and looking to maybe get into new markets or to expand their product line in a particular market. So it is open to all Hawaii companies. And these webinars are intended to give information that's specific either to exporting or to particular markets. And so thank you, Rob, for putting up our website. So today's, as Rob mentioned, is the first of 2022, and we generally have one a month. So please check our website for our upcoming sessions, and yes, at Invest.Hawaii.Gov, and it's under the exporting tab. So export readiness. The other part of the export readiness is, Rob also mentioned, is our one-on-one business advising. So when you submit a registration form for HiSTEP, what we do is we will pair you up with one of our partner organizations, which include Hawaii Pacific Export Council, the Small Business Development Centers, the Patsy Mink Center on Business and Leadership, and the Veterans Business Center. And so they will schedule consultation with the companies to kind of go through your registration and see where the company is at in terms of their exporting experience, and help them in terms of giving suggestions as to maybe the resources available either through HiSTEP or maybe some other organizations to help you in your exporting, with your exporting strategy, particularly in putting an exporting plan together. So that's the export readiness. Our Hawaii pavilions are targeted trade shows that we organize, that DBET organizes, and we recruit companies to exhibit together in the trade show under the Hawaii banner. And we found that to be a very powerful way of companies being able to promote themselves, promote their products. And it's also cost effective. Well, we want to make it so that a company can be able to participate in a large trade show with minimal investment on their part. So Rob does have up what we have planned for this calendar year. You know, with what's been happening with COVID the last few years, we haven't had in-person trade shows, and right now, this is what we have planned, but again, stay tuned, you know, as things progress. You know, we may see changes to the calendar. We were just talking, and our two speakers might be able to speak more to it, but you know, we're not sure about what's happening with Japan. I mean, we had hoped to go to FabX and Tokyo International Gift Show and TIGS, or as we call it, has been a very productive show for our companies in the past. But actually, it's been held. Just to let you know, the trade show has been held. It's just that companies could not go, and you know, Hawaii companies could not attend themselves. They had to use either their representatives or distributors, whoever they have representing them in Japan. So that was a requirement. So just keep a lookout. We're also this year working with the Department of Agriculture, and they have several food shows that they're looking at. Again, one coming up next month in Dubai, the Gulf Food Show, and then 2 in Japan. So just continue to check our website, but these are what we have planned, and we'll see as things move along with COVID whether or not they actually happen in person, or you know, what kind of travel restrictions there might be. And then finally, the last component is our company assistance, and this is where companies can apply directly for some financial assistance to help support and help pay for some of the activities in their export development plans. This year we have split them into 2 categories, one for the new to export companies and one for market expansion companies. The main difference is that there's a different threshold of dollar amounts that can be requested. So the new to export companies, the maximum that you can request is $5,000, and for a market expansion company, it's up to $15,000. And the other thing is, for a market expansion company, we are requiring that the company has at least $200,000 in annual revenue. So, and that's really because we know that it takes resources to export, and so we want to make sure that companies have the financial resources to be able to, you know, continue along and be successful in exporting. So, if you are interested, please check this out. I will mention that the deadline for applying for these funds is next Friday, January 14th at 4 p.m. So if you are interested, please take a look at it right away. And what we're talking about today, e-commerce and digital marketing, because of companies not being able to travel, because trade shows are not happening in person, or haven't been for the last 2 years. There has been a big focus on the part of SBA to make sure that these funds can be used for these type of online globalization efforts. And so I will tell you that that the company assistance can be used for these types of activities, for you to for companies that are interested in e-commerce and doing and putting forth a digital marketing strategy. So I'll just stop at that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. But all of the information on HiSTEP is on our website. And thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Jamie alluded to the agriculture pavilions that the Department of Agriculture is working on in the upcoming cycle. I just wanted to point everyone to a webinar that we had in December. If you happen to have agriculture or food products, we did a specific webinar in November. It was on exporting of agricultural products from Hawaii, and you can see that archived on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just look for the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And I would also point you to the kickoff meeting we had. Essentially, our flagship event every year is roughly a 4-hour webinar called Export University 101, and we cover at a high level finance and marketing, logistics, it's legal, et cetera. And that's here as well. And we can go back several years of recordings of our seminars when they were live, and then webinars for the past 2 years. So again, that's just go to YouTube and look for Hawaii Pacific Export Council. I wanted to mention that this is the organization that I'm representing, the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, the nonprofit. This is our website at HawaiiExportSupport.com, and we publish an annual export guide, which is free and will help our local companies here start their exporting adventure. Now, let's jump into our first speaker of the day is Kanzo Nara. He's been a frequent speaker with us in the past few years. To my mind, the foremost expert in Hawaii regarding bilingual websites, bilingual digital marketing. He has 2 companies. One is the I Do Web School, where he actually teaches people how to make their own e-commerce websites, and then also his consulting company, Imagine Web Creation, which will help people do build websites and do digital marketing in Japanese and English. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kanzo Nara. Please tell us about multilingual websites.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jamie, for having me. And I'd like to thank our participants for joining us today. I'm always excited to attend these seminars. So to start off with, I'd like to share my screen with you guys. Okay, so today I'll be talking about bilingual websites, specifically for the Japan market and Japanese websites. To start off with a website, you will have to start with a domain with any type. And when it comes to domains, a lot of my clients tend to kind of get off on the wrong foot here. So I'd like to be specific about this section. For multilingual websites, this is a website where obviously you have different languages on it, but each website needs to be a separate domain. A multi-regional website is a website that isn't just for that language, but it could be a French website in Canada, things like that. So it could be a Japanese website here in Hawaii for Japanese in the US. So these are 2 aspects of where your audience is. So when you're considering starting a secondary language or a third language for your website, it's very important to understand what type of domain you want to purchase. The obvious simple choice is a .com. This is an international one. The second one is, and this is popular in Japan, is a .co.jp, but you need to have a company registration in Japan, so it's probably not as easy to obtain, but it is popular in Japan. The third one is adding a subdomain, which is jp.yourdomain.com. This is an easy one because it doesn't cost you any additional fees. What I'd like to specify here is what you do not want to do is have a subdirectory within your website. So your website.com / something like JP. This is something that most people tend to do because it's easy. It's a website within a website. And I'll go into more detail why you shouldn't do this. So this information is from Google Web Developers. So this is Google's official stance on how to treat domains for country-specified or regional targeted websites. The first one here is country-specific domain. So example.jp. This one is for Japan. This is a clear geo-targeting. So when people search for things, a Japanese domain will help you find that within Japan. This is popular for large companies, let's say like Toyota, because their cars have different prices for US, Germany, and Japan. So they tend to have multiple websites with different country geo-targeting attached to them. The second one here is a subdomain with geo-targeting. This one is you use your existing domain and you add a JP or EN or KO to the top of it. This one is easy because you don't have to purchase a new one. You get to keep your branding if you have a domain that you really like. This is probably the preferred and most simple way to start off with. And the third one, subdirectories within a geo-targeting. This one is not very much recommended by Google, and as I mentioned before, it's having a website within a website. The biggest reason you don't want to do this is when search engines scroll your website, what happens is the robot tries to calculate how many characters are in the website. So for like English or Japanese. And when you do this for Japanese, since Japanese use kanji, English is always going to have a larger quantity of characters. So your website's going to be more dominant in English and not so much in the secondary language. So you want to be very careful when you're selecting your domain when starting a bilingual website. Okay, now I'd like to look a little bit into website design, compare some US websites with Japanese websites. A few key elements of Japanese websites is first, it has heavy content. So Japanese consumers they like special offers, package deals. A lot of the information is kind of like spoon-fed information. Not so much users are going to search for products, but you're rather providing material to them right off the bat. The second one is banner ads. I know Mark is probably going to be going into Rakuten and things like that, but if you look at Amazon and Rakuten, you can tell the difference very easily because products have banner ads on them for Rakuten, but not Amazon. These are kind of like tiny advertisements within the website, and it's very popular in the Japanese design industry. Okay, first website I like to take a look at is Pizza Hut US. This is a very simple layout. You have one main featured image, you have a start order section at the top, and you have your navigation here. Very simple one page, front page landing for pizza order. Now, second, just for additional comparison, this is the Pizza Hut website for Saudi Arabia. Once again, very simple image, your ordering section here, header navigation, and so on. Next, I'd like to take a look at the Japanese Pizza Hut web design. Just at a first glance, you can tell that there's a lot happening here. You have a featured header image here, and the middle section here is where these are banner ads. So it shows package deals of what's popular or not. You have a side navigation here. You have a member login section, header navigation, subheader navigation, and then you have tab navigations here that has popular rankings of orders and so on. So there's a lot of information happening here, and you can tell right off the bat that it's quite different than US or other country websites. This is also similar for the Korea and Chinese market. Okay. So now that we have our domain and we've designed our website, I'd like to go into more of the e-commerce section, and that is shipping, tax, and handling. So when setting up your shopping cart, it seems pretty straightforward. You have a product, people buy it, and then they check out. But what you need to keep in mind is there's a lot of fees that is incorporated into an e-commerce website. And these are some of the reasons people state on why they abandon checkouts. So people find your website, they find the product they like, they put it in your cart. You want them to continue with the purchase, and you want to keep in mind how not to lose these customers. A couple of these reasons here is extra costs are too high. So shipping, taxes, and fees might be too high. 60% of abandoned checkouts happen here. The second one, and I have to say, a lot of my Japanese clients like to use this, is they want customers to create an account with them before they purchase. And a lot of customers, users, they don't want to do this. They just want to purchase, and if they like you, they're going to come back. But what they don't want is you emailing, blasting them throughout the year. So that's 37% of abandoned checkouts. So if your shopping cart has a feature that has a membership turn on and off, I recommend keeping it off. The third reason for abandonment is too long. The checkout process has too many questions or too many checkboxes and whatnot. And the list goes on. But what you want to be clear about is be transparent about your fees. If you have specific fees for your industry or your product, be clear about them. State them up front on your website, and let your users know that there are fees that are going to be charged. And don't try to spring it on them while they're checking out. Okay, so for tax and customs, so when you're going to be shipping internationally, it's very important to understand your customs HS code. This is Harmonized System Code. This is a code that is assigned to each product. So whether you're shipping vitamins, shampoo, or a T-shirt, each one has a specific numerical code to it. And what you have to do is go inside the harmonized system and find what 6-digit code is for your product. And by adding this and putting it on your packaging, your products get sent to your customers more smoothly. Sometimes I hear of my clients who do not do this, or a few years ago they weren't aware of it. They have a customer buy their product, they send it, and customs shows up at the user customer in Japan, and charges the consumer a custom rate. So you don't want that to happen. There's a couple of resources here that I'm sure Rob's going to be sending out later, but you can take a look here for more information on the harmonized system code. And also this one is the first one is the customs organization website. And what I found kind of interesting about this site and funny is it's a non-secured site. So it's not a HTTPS, but a HTTP site. But anyway, it's a good place to take a look at to find out more information for your product. Okay, so now that we have our domain, website, and shopping cart set up, we're going to start adding products. And once we start doing that, you want to be very specific about how much profit you're going to be made for your product. And this is an example sheet of how you can do that. So if the cost of your product is $12, you have packaging that comes in, cost of shipping, handling charges, duty and taxes. There's a credit card fee when they process it, and then you want to calculate the profit margin. And in this example, a $12 product comes out to be $56. So when you have a shopping cart, and depending on the type of industry or category of your products, you want to calculate these very specifically for each product. So sometimes the more you sell, the more handling fee and more credit card fees happening, and you're making less money. You don't want that to happen. Next section I'd like to get in is the marketing and SEO component of the website. So now that you have your shopping cart set up and your website's ready for users to visit, you want to advertise your website. The biggest one and the highly recommended one I have is PPC, which is pay-per-clicks. This is paying for keywords on Google, Yahoo, Facebook, or Instagram. Sometimes you can even purchase banner ad spaces within websites. Like a popular one in Japan would be CookPad, which is a recipe website that has 6 million viewers per month. They sell sections within their website where you can advertise and add your banner ad there. The second one is SEO. This is getting harder and harder as there's more content on the web. But the best place to start is not so much, hidden techniques and whatnot, but just writing good business blogs. This is the best way to promote your product, and it's the highest place for new customers to find out about you.
SEO is search engine optimization, right?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Yes, search engine optimization. And the third one is SNS, social media. And this day and age, we're very familiar with this, but put more effort into it. It's a lot of people are turning towards more professionals to help them out to get more awareness out there. Okay, this is some information that actually just came out a couple days ago. This is e-commerce sales by countries for 2021. Uh, the interesting part about this is this actually switched from China to US within the last year. So China last year spent $2,779 billion on e-commerce alone. And US coming in at less than half that is 843. The UK at 169, and Japan is at number 4 at 144 billion. So Japan is in the top 10 e-commerce markets in the world. So it is a very good place to start. This is also some new information that was published by Shopify recently. This is global spending projections for online e-commerce. So in 2021, we had $4.89 trillion that was spent online. And compared to the year before that, 2020, it's increasing. And especially the last 2 years, you have a significant increase in spending. And Shopify is projecting that up by 2024, these numbers are going to go above 6 trillion. Okay, so as mentioned before, so advertising on pay-per-clicks is choosing keywords in Japanese. Uh, the hardest part about advertising in Japanese, and this is also true for Chinese and Korean too, is that they have different sets of alphabets. So, for example, here in Hawaii, a popular keyword would be something like ryoko, which is travel. There's three ways of spelling ryoko in Japanese. One is in kanji, one is in hiragana, and one is in katakana. And depending on your keyword, you're going to be using a different set. So not only do you have to select the correct keyword when you're marketing, you have to choose which characters to use so you can market properly. And this is very difficult. So when you're looking for a bilingual or Japanese web marketer, you want to make sure that not only do they speak the language, but they're also proficient in reading and writing the language. Because this isn't something you can just type into Google Translate and figure out which keyword is best. And this gets even more difficult when it comes into keyword trends. For example, a couple years ago in Japanese, financial was spelled in katakana as financial. But in the last couple years, they changed the trend and it's called financial in katakana again. So it's spelled differently. And so keyword trends are quite different in Japan. Okay, so pay-per-click, or also this is known as search engine marketing in Japan. This is very effective because you can be specific about the time of day or location and region. Also, you can be specific about gender, age. If you're advertising on Facebook, you can do income too. You can advertise your products to a specific income bracket. Landing page optimization and also load time factors into this. The good thing about Japan is their internet speed is a lot faster than ours. So when it comes to website design, and another reason going back to the banner ads, why banner ads are so popular is that here in the US, web designers are kind of forced to optimize their page for faster load time. But since the internet is faster in Japan and Korea, designers get to play around more with their digital content on the website. Okay, social media in Japan. So I know everybody, has their favorite social media, and there's a lot of platforms out there. But what you want to be careful is once you start on a platform, you're going to probably spend a lot of time focus on that platform. But before you dive into your favorite platform, you should understand what country is popular with what platform. So, for example, like globally, Facebook still has like a large user. It has about 2.3 billion users. But in Japan, Facebook is at number four and only 28 million users. In Japan, the number one social media is Line at 80 million. Second is Twitter. Third is Instagram. So when you're going to be focusing on a social media campaign, you want to make sure you're in the right platform for your right market. Yes, this is another important statistic when it comes to Japan is that 83% of all users, when you do a preliminary search, they're going to be searching for you on your phone. What this means is they have less time, smaller browser, and they're not going to see a full screen of a website. So it's important to know that you need to grab their attention with a smartphone. So web users in Japan. I like to focus on these three because it makes more sense in this mobile age. So first is in transit and the metropolitan area of Japan. If you ever been to Japan, you're probably familiar, but a lot of people commute. Public transportation is very efficient. So like the metropolitan area of Tokyo, Kanagawa, and Chiba alone has something like 25 million people living there, which is about one fifth of Japanese population, and 90% of them commute. And it's not unusual for them to commute 45 minutes to an hour, even an hour and a half one way. So they spend a lot of time on their phones, and a lot of Japanese mobile users actually carry a secondary battery with them throughout the day so they can continue looking at their mobile data. So it's important to understand when people are going to be seeing your website. The second one is lunch or break times. People open up their smartphones right away when they're in break and start opening it. So the first and second one is going back to the 83%. This is probably where preliminary searches are going to happen and people are going to find you. When the actual purchasing time happens, when people put it into their shopping cart, is more highly in the evening. So they're going to search for you in the morning or the afternoon. They might bookmark you or save it within their apps. And then in the nighttime, they're going to open up a PC and actually do the physical buying of the website of your product. So people are spending more time on mobile. So this becomes more important is having a good landing page. And when I mean landing page, this shouldn't be just applied to your front page. You should have landing page optimization done on every page. So one of the important things in web design rule is the 2-second rule. So you have 2 seconds to grab the attention of your users. The second one is for mobile is you have about 2 swipes. So if somebody clicks on a keyword, they find your website, they go in, if the website loads in 2 seconds, and if they don't have the information within 2 swipes, most likely they're going to uh, uh, leave your website. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that your users are busy with short attention spans. Next, I'd like to talk more about globalization of e-commerce. So what this means is, you want to make your website more user friendly for each targeted country you have. The first one is obviously having like a currency converter. This is nice because obviously the U.S. dollar is a good currency to have has a parameter, but it's nice to have international currency set up for your users. Some of the recommended services I have for this is there's a website called To Checkout that has about I think 18 or 19 different currency converters set up on them, so people can actually check out using this currency converter, and it's not just an example; it's an actual checkout in their currency. This one is probably the most obvious one, is language support. So a few things you should have, if you can have it, is bilingual staff, a bilingual website with a dedicated URL, extensive FAQ, frequently asked questions. If you can, it's nice to have like a chat feature. If you're doing it, if you're doing marketing in Japan, @line, which is a platform I mentioned before, has an excellent business service where you can add this to your website and people can chat with you in real time. And also for the Japanese market, it's very highly recommended to have a detailed contact form. As you can see on the left here, compared to the US, usually we just have your name, email address, subject, and then content. Here they ask you the date of your birth, why you're contacting, your phone number, etc., etc. But the Japanese users are very compliant with this, and they like filling out more information because it kind of gets them closer to the goal faster by having more information instead of emailing back and forth, back and forth. Okay, this is data that was published by Spotify again that says this is can't read, won't buy in figures. So this is some important information to have when you're setting up your bilingual website. The first one here is the preferred content in their language is up to 65%, even if it's poor quality. So I guess that means, in a lot of cases, even if you have like a robot translation, it's better to have a language of that in that country. Tolerate mixed languages or not. 67% do not want this. Product reviews in their own language. 73% want reviews in their own language. 66% want online machine translation. And the other one is 40% will not buy in other languages. So these are pretty high numbers that you want to try to overcome when you're setting up your bilingual website. Some web and IT trends for the year 2022. First one is multimedia experience. So since COVID started, we've been spending a lot more time on the web. The numbers have actually increased from 3.5 hours per day to 8.2 hours a day. So we're spending a significant amount more time on the website. And what this means is people can view more video content, 3D virtual tours, you can increase text content, captivating questionnaires, and so on. So we can add more information to the web. And if you have the means to do so, please add more information to your website. Next one is complete transaction. Speaking from personal experience, websites I really dislike is when you go to a website and it sends you to a PDF and it says, please print this out and fax it in or send it in, type of thing. You're not really completing anything at that stage. So what you want to do is put yourself in your user's foot and try to see what they want to accomplish with a transaction, whether it's purchasing a t-shirt or making an appointment with you. So you want to create a good transaction flow chart and find out where you want your customer to start and where is the completion of that. Define a good target goal. Some things you can do for this is setting up an appointment system or reservation system, online payment options, not just regular checkout, but to give them multiple payment options. Things like reminder text, email. Try to keep your assure your customer that they're getting things done when they visit your site. Design trends for 2022. This has been very popular. Is scrollytelling. What this is kind of like a long website page that kind of tells a story while you're browsing through. Because unlike on a desktop where you can click back and forth on a page, people on mobile phones, smartphones kind of like to scroll. So having a scrollytelling website is getting more popular. Colorless design. So since we're we're in the smartphone age, less design in the background is happening. So what this means is a lot of websites are kind of going black and white. There's not so much like I know what was popular 10 years ago here in Hawaii was kind of like having hibiscuses or flowers or wavy lines in your background, but that's not happening anymore because it's too noisy on a smartphone and you don't have that much space anyway. This is a big market right now, is video marketing. Since everybody is spending more time on YouTube, YouTube is turning into like the new, television pretty much. That's one channel. So it's very popular to advertise on here. It's the fastest growing market right now for advertising. It's very good at localizing, especially for international too. You can start very cheaply at about $10 a day. Skippable ads, this is kind of a technique that a lot of large corporations use, but if somebody views your ad for less than 5 seconds, you don't have to pay anything to YouTube. So you can actually create a short ad where people will skip. So subliminally, they might be listening and getting your name, but they're actually not watching it. So you're getting free advertising. This is a very effective, but kind of high technique way of advertising. Yeah, what's kind of interesting that's been happening with YouTube in the past year is the new growing demographics of YouTube users are right now from 36 to 65-year-olds. They're increasing a lot more right now. So 75% of them like YouTube because they get to embrace nostalgia. 68% are using them they like to stay in the know, like watching news online, and 73%, this is a very popular one, is how to. So instead of reading explanations of things, they like to see videos of how things are done. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining today. Thank you, Yvette and HiSTEP, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kanzo-san. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions for you in the Q&A, so we'll wait until after Mark speaks. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mark Frody. He's from Big Picture International in Tokyo. I've known Mark for a few years, and his company, his staff, are clear experts in setting up foreign companies with doing business at Amazon Japan, Rakuten, even Yahoo. Some people in the U.S. are surprised to hear that Yahoo is actually still a popular company, but it is in Japan. But I'll let Mark explain all of that. He also has warehousing capability in Japan, where he can pre-position the products to be sold either through your own website or through Amazon, through Rakuten, or some combination thereof. But I'd rather not speak for Mark. I'll let him jump into it and give you all the details. So please, Mark, welcome. Thank you for speaking today, and we look forward to hearing about Big Picture International.
Great, Rob, thank you very much. And Jamie, thank you. And Kanzo, thanks for your excellent explanation and kind of getting this thing started. So welcome, everybody. Mahalo. I'm basically a New Jersey guy who found his way to Japan and stayed there for a much longer time than I ever expected. And I've been lucky enough to have worked myself into the market entry and e-commerce side of the business here. And we've been very successful at helping literally dozens of companies from all over the world, US, Europe, South America, Australia, enter the market primarily through e-commerce. Now, we do have offline marketing services that we offer to our clients, but the bulk of our work is basically being done on the e-commerce platforms. And as Rob said, the three major platforms, Rakuten, Amazon, and Yahoo, but especially with Rakuten and Amazon. So I'll share screen here. You'll see the presentation that I'm going to give. Actually, if we have enough time, I'm gonna actually show you two presentations. But the first one is going to give you hopefully the background and the tools you need to know to successfully enter the market. I'm very much into workshop style webinars. I think you're here to understand how to do business. So I'm going to do my best to give you the ABCs of doing that. Okay, we'll start with why Japan. The fact that you're on this this particular webinar means you're interested. Maybe you've done business in Japan, or you want to expand your business. Maybe you see that Japanese visitors and consumers are interested in your products, and you want to expand into the market here. So it is the 4th largest market in the world. There are different data points. The data points that we use from the Ministry of Economics, Industry and Trade says that the market is closer to about $200 billion US in 2019. And as you saw the statistics from Kanzo, e-commerce grew tremendously, maybe 20–25% or more from 2019 to 2020. So there are 3 major platforms, and there are really 2 ways to get into the market when it comes to e-commerce. You either set up your own e-commerce website, perhaps using Magenta or Shopify or some other service, and doing cross-border sales, sending your products to Japan or having some warehouse, or starting with the marketplaces. And we've basically done both. We've done quite a bit of work with online websites, but my recommendations to international merchants is to consider the benefits of the marketplace, right? So you set up your storefront on a marketplace like Rakuten, and it's similar to building a mini website. You then have immediately at your fingertips 45 or 50 million active users, and you can market directly to them. So the process is less expensive, and I think a little bit more user-friendly when it comes to getting a business up and running. And we've worked with many of our clients where we've done a progression. So start with the marketplaces, develop your website after you understand what's working and what's not working, make the larger investment in that, and then of course driving traffic. And then the next step after that might very well be to go to a wholesaler and say, hey, we've got a business here. Japanese consumers love our products. We have some thousands of names in our customer database. And don't you want to talk to us? And I can tell you that is a fundamentally different conversation than if you come to the marketplace at first and say, we have the best of this, don't you want to sell it? That'll often be greeted with skepticism on the part of a Japanese wholesaler or licensee. So the other thing about the major marketplaces is they account for over 50% of the entire e-commerce industry here in Japan. So you're really capturing a very large and active portion of the user base, and also virtually 100% consumer coverage, meaning of the 90+% of Japanese people who have shopped online, 99% of them have shopped on those 3 platforms. So tremendous coverage. It really is I think the simplest and most straightforward way of getting into the market. So the first thing to learn is you're on this webinar, you're obviously interested in learning, educate yourself, or find a partner that understands the market, that can explain these things to you and help you avoid common mistakes and get into the marketplace, not only successfully ultimately, but as quickly and inexpensively as possible. So that's your key recommendation number 1. Okay, there are predominantly 3 ways for you to enter the market. One is through cross-border. The other is having a local business using an agent like my company to run the business on your behalf, or to actually set up your own operation here. And obviously, the third option is not the one that's most immediately open to most merchants, but ultimately, again, it could be a progression where as you build your business, you ultimately take some level of direct control over it. And when I say cross-border, I mean, you could do that either through a website or through the major marketplaces. Yahoo does not allow it. Amazon, I can say, tolerates it, and Rakuten encourages it. And when I say Amazon tolerates it, there's often when you're doing, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but when you're doing cross-border, you're always at the mercy of either shipping companies and their fees and delivery times, or if you're using less expensive postal services, then you're really at the mercy of how international logistics are operating. So especially
Mark,
in today's day and age.
Just to be pedantic about it, when
Yeah.
you're saying cross-border, you're saying shipping product from Hawaii to a customer in Japan who has purchased it on a website in Japan. Is that?
That's correct. Yes. Thank you for defining that. Yes, that is, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, that is cross-border. It's basically D2C, direct to consumer. So they're buying from you and you're sending directly to them. The agent managed one, you have both options. I have clients that are doing cross-border businesses and they're doing $1 million plus a year. So don't get the sense that cross-border is a dead end. It's not. It's a very viable and often the first business model that merchants will pursue. But the other option is to do it when you're talking about using an agent, is to have the benefit of using an agent here is that you're able to do in-country inventory. And that is a game changer in many ways, because next day delivery or 2 days delivery, Japanese are not having to pay that cost of the Japanese consumers not having to pay the cost of shipping from a foreign country. So anyway, we'll talk about all of that in a little more detail. And then, we talked a little bit about mobile. Yeah, I think as the time I wrote this earlier this year, it was 65%. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more like 75 or 80% now. It is the predominant form of purchase media now, and everything that Kanzo said about optimizing for mobile goes equally well in my discussion when we talk about how we set up our clients' storefronts. Optimizing for mobile is essential. And then something you might find interesting, although I guess in the case of Hawaii, you have often such idiosyncratic and very unique products. But the general sense is that Japanese consumers don't vary that much in terms of what they're buying. Now, when they buy food, they may be buying specifically Japanese food, for example. So I don't want to get the sense that these are carbon copy consumers, but the most popular products around the world in terms of categories are often the same. And Japanese consumers are interested in foreign products. There's just a lot of obstacles and a lot of concerns that they have that may prohibit them from actually purchasing your product. So the key recommendations, I already said, one of them optimized for mobile, and the other one is progression. If you want to start with less risk, less investment, you can start with a cross-border model, and you can move to an in-country model, and then, as I said earlier, expand into your own website, and then perhaps even offline. Okay, now this next, I should be, let me turn on the, try to get the slideshow going. There we go, sorry. All right, so this may look like a scary slide and it may look very complicated, but in fact, it's very easy. This is a schemata of the cross-border model, and it breaks it down into the 4 primary players. The overseas seller, in this case yourself, the service provider, in this case me, if you would choose to use a service provider, Rakuten, or Amazon or any other platform, and then the consumer. So you build your storefront, you publish it on Rakuten, or you build your product listings, get your account, and you build it on Amazon. And then you market directly to the consumer. The consumer purchases through the platform, you're notified about it, and then you have your warehouse dispatch that product to the Japanese consumer overseas. And it lists down here who's responsible. We as an agent do operate the store, we process orders, we handle payments, we do customer service, and communicate back to our clients overseas. Hey, every day we send a CSV file, Here's your orders for the day. Please fulfill them. So I don't want to oversimplify things, but it is a fairly easy and now quite common practice. The in-country inventory model obviously complicates things to a certain extent in that you have to choose which products you want to send, what's the volume, you have to get them to a warehouse. We have 2 warehouses, we're adding a third cold and frozen food warehouse because we're getting a lot of demand for fresh foods. It just poses a whole set of different challenges, but the benefits will almost always outweigh those costs and those risks because your business will grow more dramatically, typically if you have in-country inventory. So this is what I was talking about earlier about the popular products. I'm sure if you looked at Hawaii or America or most other developed countries, you would see that these products are amongst the most popular. Food and beverage is something that's growing dramatically here in Japan as a product category. Okay, Japanese consumers, you probably know them from seeing them in Hawaii. They're very particular and very peculiar in that they're very sophisticated. They seek a lot of information. They want to know what they're buying. They want to know the brand. They're very literate in terms of understanding about your product, about your brands, about your competitors. But they're also curious about international products, but often cautious. So, as Kanzo said, you have to make sure that you're presenting your products in a way that's familiar with the Japanese, but still that they know it's something unique and international. The language needs to be right. You need to provide as much information as possible, and also make sure that return policies are generous, so that they know if they make a mistake, they can even if you're doing a cross-border, the return address is somewhere in Japan, so that they don't have to go through the hassle of returning something international. There's a lot of tricks like that to at least try to eliminate some or most of the obstacles that most Japanese normally will have about purchasing from an international company or purchasing internationally. So the key recommendations here: more information is better. I tell my clients when we're putting their storefronts together, send me more than you think I need. We want videos, we want how-to instructions, sizing charts, we want everything. Because as Kanzo showed you, the amount of data and information that's being projected on a website or on a storefront is much more than the typical Western eye would ever want or appreciate or need. That's not the case here. So it is true, and more is better in this case. As I mentioned, liberal return policies, Japanese language customer service, and look to reduce in any way you can the obstacles of cost and time to get your product into their hands. I'll skip over this. This is just some more reasons why Japanese are hesitant to buy from international merchants. But now we move into the kind of the main part here, the big 3 marketplaces. So over 50% market share, 100% consumer coverage. Rakuten and Yahoo are shopping malls. So you have to build a brand store, which is great. It's a way for you to project and present your brand, not just your products, to your customers. Only Amazon Seller Central is in English. You as American merchants and companies have an additional benefit. So probably very much familiar with Amazon. You can operate your Amazon account through in Japan, through your Seller Central account. That's not the case with Rakuten or Yahoo. They're only Japanese operating systems, and they're very complicated. They're very difficult to master. So you really have to have either a Japanese person in your office who knows it and knows how to do it and can handle it, but also deliver customer support in real time, meaning what's typically your evening, our mornings, for example. But you need an agent, and with Yahoo, you have to have an agent. You can't operate internationally, as I mentioned. The other benefit of being an American company is you can set up your own account on Rakuten, and that's important for some companies. I've had a lot of companies approach me, but not ultimately decide to work with me or any other agent because they say, no, we have to own the account. And those are some European and non-American companies or non-North American companies. As an American company, you can set up your own account and still have an agent like us to operate on your behalf. So if you leave us or we leave you, you still have the account. You don't have to start from scratch. So that's a real benefit here. Let's see. Most of the commission.
Mark, this is Rob. Just a real quick question. What percentage of your clients operate on 2 or all 3 of these platforms?
All but one. And the only one that isn't is operating on Amazon, and it's a UK company, and they just said they're not going to. They want to get their own account, so they're waiting until COVID is done, and the Rakuten people that are in the UK can go visit them and set up their own account.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the key recommend. So I was going to say the commissions that the marketplace will take out at the low end is Yahoo at about 6.5%. Amazon can be usually anywhere between 8 and 15%, and Rakuten is usually between 9 and 11%. So you saw Kanzo's P&L. When you're doing your P&Ls, you'd want to apply at least 10% of the selling price going to the marketplace themselves. So as an American company, starting with Amazon Japan should not be that difficult. It means translating your product listings into Japanese, if you have them. It means either operating on your own or having an agent help you with Amazon, and then making the decision, are we going to go cross-border or are we going to send inventory to Amazon? Now, you can operate on Amazon remotely. So you can set up the account, you can send your inventory to Amazon, but Amazon won't take it. You just have to use a customs clearance agent or an importer of record like BPI. So we're also an importer. We're the importer of record for all of our clients. That's the other way to do it. You can say, okay, we're going to start with Amazon, and own the account, get somebody to do the translations for us, set up our product listings, and we don't want to do the cross-border model. We want to do the in-country model. Okay, we get our importer of record to import the products and have them shipped to Amazon. We're going to use fulfillment by Amazon, FBA, and you can operate that way. You'll have to be careful to make sure that you're being able to provide the proper levels of customer service, but FBA provides all of the basic customer service, meaning, where's my package? If somebody calls and say how to use it, they're going to say, sorry, we can't answer that question. But 90% plus of inquiries are basically, where's my product, or it wasn't the right product, or it was damaged, I want to return it. How do I do it? Amazon can handle all of that. So some of our clients will start with Amazon, establish a business there, get the sense that the market is working for them, and then move on to Rakuten, and then move on to Yahoo. Most of them, though, say, no, we feel good about the Japanese market. We know there's some level of interest in our products. We want to get started from the beginning, and we're going to do either 2 or all 3 of the marketplaces. Okay, so this is where things start differentiating a little bit in terms of size and in terms of product categories. You can see here that there are Amazon's strong areas and Rakuten's. Amazon is very strong on books and electronics, and Rakuten is pretty much stronger on most of the other major product categories, including food, including apparel. And overall, they have a larger market share than Amazon. Yahoo is quite small. Incrementally, it's just it's 1/5 or 1/6 the size of Rakuten. So we tend to work with our clients almost exclusively on Rakuten and Amazon now, because the additional work and effort and expense with Yahoo sometimes doesn't pay off. Okay, The next part of my presentation is going to be really fundamental stuff. And I believe, Rob, certainly I'm more than happy to have the deck go out to anybody that wants it. So you'll be able to look at this at your leisure. We talked about the market research, doing it yourself, using Jetro, using one of the US government agencies that can help. That's the starting point. And then perhaps even talking to somebody like myself. I'm very open. I'm happy to talk with you and give you as much information as possible. No obligations, but somebody who knows the market who could help you, as I said earlier, avoid some of the major pitfalls. Then in terms of importing, if you are going to do the cross-border model, there's almost no restrictions. You can send cosmetics, you can send medicaments, you can send food, you can send just about anything. You can't send guns, you can't send weapons, those kind of things are not allowed. But basically, you have almost no limitations. When it comes to in-country inventory, there's a lot. Not to say that it's difficult or you can't do it or it's too expensive, but there's a lot of requirements. And everything that gets imported has to have some type of paperwork, some type of testing in some cases. And we've done works with so many different product categories. There's very few that we haven't had some experience with. And increasingly, it's getting better. I can tell you years ago, it was very difficult to import some food products. That's become much more easy. When it's testing, there's some streamlining and the testing isn't as expensive. So it's certainly possible to do. It is more work and there is more involved in that. But as I said earlier, if you're going to have a long-term business here, at some point, if not initially, you'll have to address that question. I talked about it. Yep.
Real quick, a lot of our Hawaii companies manufacture skin creams and lotions and these types of products, natural body products. And I'm frequently asked about the testing procedure for those types of products. Do you have experience with that? And then secondly, do they have to do each SKU?
Okay, I'll take the second question first. If the ingredients are the same, doesn't matter the size or the shape of the bottle. But if the ingredients are different in any way, color could be the same product with a different flavor or the same product with a different color, it will have to be tested separately. So we've done that. We've done work with food and food-related products, kitchenware. We've done all of that. We've never done cosmetics or skincare products simply because it's too difficult. You have to have a full-time chemist on staff. They're very, very rigorous requirements for that. So we've worked with nutritional supplement companies. In all cases, it's been a cross-border model. Otherwise, you're going to have to find a importer who has those licenses, who can do that. That would be a step needed for that, if not through cross-border.
Thank you.
Okay, so you need to find a good importer of record to make sure that your products are coming in. You'll want to use a good shipping service. We've worked with air freight and sea freight. We've worked with food, with cold storage, and with ambient. And like I said earlier, we're going to start from this year. We're going to start working with frozen deliveries too. Okay, so I mentioned about FBA. You can set up your own account. You can do cross-border, or you can use FBA. For Rakuten, as an American company, you can set up your own account. And you could choose to operate it yourself, either cross-border or in-country, but you have to have Japanese capabilities in-house and somebody who really understands Rakuten, or it won't be successful. And then Yahoo, I mentioned, you need to use an agent. They don't allow cross-border operations. Okay, so storefront development, it's like a mini website, as I mentioned that. Amazon is not nearly where Rakuten and Yahoo are in terms of being able to present your brand. So they're much more product centric. So getting those product pages done first, translated, keywords, and then using that same information and porting it over to Rakuten to the storefront there is what we often do. And the localization goes beyond just the translation. As we talked about, getting the pages right, getting the look and feel right is really important. And it's a one-time cost. It's not outrageous. Could be in the a few $1,000s to get that done, which would be part of your setup costs. The next one is the operations themselves. Rakuten's RMS system is not easy to use. You'll need an agent to do that. Amazon, you can, if you're familiar with Seller Central. Again, you have the option of managing that yourself or having an agent like us, because our clients don't understand necessarily the marketing process here, price competition. We do all that. We see what products can win the buy box, and then we market into it. Here's a good example. This is very similar to what Kanzo showed. You can see how busy a typical Rakuten storefront is. There's a lot of things going on there, but there's an order to it. For those of us who have an eye for it, we know what's there and we know why it's there. Okay, so cross-border and order fulfillment, you will be subjected in some cases to taxes and tariffs. So what you don't want to do is have the price not reflect that, and then the consumer gets their delivery and they ask for the equivalent of $15 at the door because they didn't know that there was going to be taxes and tariffs. So this is the downside to cross-border. Oftentimes we would recommend create a bundled price, know what your costs are to ship, know what your costs are to your cost of goods sold, find the right price, bundle it together, include shipping and handling, and then there's just no questions. When you do local inventory, you do need to make sure that your warehouse, if you can use Amazon actually to fulfill for Rakuten orders. We did that when we first started. It was a simple, easy way to do it, although it's expensive. Amazon charges a lot to send their warehouse products to other platforms, and sometimes they'd make a mistake and they'd put it in an Amazon. So somebody buys something on Rakuten, they put it in an Amazon box, they get it, and we get a call saying, "Why am I getting an Amazon product?" So we've tended to move away from that. That's why we have our 2 warehouses now, and we're adding the 3rd. It's quite inexpensive, believe it or not. Logistics in Japan are world-class and quite cost-effective. And what I found is that Japanese consumers are willing to pay reasonable shipping fees. Now, I know Kanzo said at the point of buy box or a basket, that's where a lot of the cancellations occur. But a reasonable cost of shipping, which we found to be about 780 yen. That's the equivalent of about $7, a little less. And people are willing to pay that. And Rakuten especially, and we do this for Amazon as well, for $40 or more, we basically offer free shipping. So there's the $7 fee that they pay if they order something below $40. And we tend to find that that offer tends to bring the average basket price up a bit. Now you can choose to bundle the price together, including free shipping, which we do on some occasions. But the general idea is that your cost of shipping the product to the consumer should 80% plus be actually covered by the consumer themselves. So that's kind of good. That certainly helps your P&L when you're not putting 15% in for shipping, domestic shipping, for example. So financial management, Amazon, if you have a Seller Central account, will actually repatriate those funds directly to your whatever bank account you choose. As an American company, Rakuten will do the same. So you can have the payments going right back to your bank account, or what many of our clients will do is have one of them send the money right back to their account to cover their costs, and leave one of the two platforms paying into a Japanese bank account that BPI manages and covers your Japanese operating costs, especially if you have a warehouse and other third-party costs that need to be covered, rather than you repatriating the money, getting the exchange rate, and then sending the money back to Japan. So that's it. So that's basically the market entry checklist for e-commerce. I mentioned about social media and external marketing, setting up your own website. We work with primarily with Shopify. We could certainly work with any partner that you choose to work with, and creating social media support to drive traffic. And again, once you build a viable business, you have every opportunity then to say, look, we have a viable business. Japanese consumers love us. Let's look at offline business opportunities and creating an omni-market business opportunity for yourself, which of course, hopefully then adds to your profitability. So I think that's about it. This is about BPI. We offer all of these services that I mentioned. So we're knowledgeable about all of that. And again, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Great. Excellent presentation, Mark. And before that, just a great presentation by Kanzo. So I'll open it up for questions. If anybody has anything, please type it into the Q&A and we can go from there. So some people have texted me questions, and there's some in the chat area as well. So I'm going to bring that up. In the background, I'm going to keep the DBET HiSTEP details up. One of the questions that came in is, Kanzo is expertise in developing a multilingual website. Mark's expertise is Amazon, Rakuten, etc. Is there room for both? If a company came to both of you guys and said, we'd like to have our own website, of course, because we need to get product information out to the world, but we'd also like to sell into Japan through Rakuten and Amazon. So to me, that seems like a reasonable approach, but do you have clients who do that sort of thing? And then it begs the question, in Kanzo's case, that probably wouldn't be an e-commerce site, because you couldn't really put your pricing on there if you also have pricing on Amazon Japan and maybe Amazon US and Rakuten and what have you. So I'll let you guys answer that. Kanzo, go first.
I think mostly for my domestic customers, I recommend that they start with a platform like Amazon, because when you're doing low volume sales at first, it's nice to have the support and the big market of users that already are offered by Amazon. When you start gradually increasing your sales, then you probably want to get into more customized retail, because while Rakuten on Amazon are fantastic, when you have a kind of a high-end specific product, you might want to have more customization happening on your cart. And I think Mark probably has further better answers for where to start off on in Japan.
Well, no, I agree. I talked about that progression as well. Like I said, some of our clients want to start on Amazon. Others want to get into the market more aggressively. But yeah, I think there's a lot of very good synergy that Kanzo and I can have. Our primary business is not developing websites or doing social media. Our primary business is to operate your storefronts. So unless, so somebody has to, once the website is done, somebody has to process orders and make sure that the warehouse is going out and inventory levels and all of that good operational stuff. So I think there's nothing prohibiting any of you from choosing Conzo and then choosing another agent instead of us, or choosing me and choosing another web developer. But as long as those main tasks are being done, a proper, successful, functional website is being done, a smart marketing strategy to drive traffic is there, and somebody there to operate your store, then I don't see why you wouldn't progress to that.
Then a follow-on question would be, I can envision a very typical Hawaii company makes something and they put it on their local website, HawaiiProduct.com, for example, and it costs, let's just say it costs $100 in the US market. When that product gets to Amazon Japan or to Rakuten, it's likely not going to cost $100, but it's going to cost $150 or something when you add in all of these shipping costs and what have you. Is the Japanese customer, how can I put this? Will they be put off by the fact that if they do a little Google searching, they can find that product in the Hawaii market for $100, whereas on Rakuten it's $150? Does that cause any problem? Because my experience is that, as you alluded to earlier, Mark, that if the cost is reasonable, and reasonable is in air quotes because my idea of reasonable and your idea of reasonable could be different, but nonetheless, I think there's a general consensus about what a reasonable shipping cost and markup would be, that a Japanese customer would very likely pay that $150, knowing that it's coming from a local domestic inventory in Japan and what have you. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think I need to add much to that, Rob. That is exactly the thought process that a Japanese consumer will go through. Although I can't say that I have any statistics on this. I don't think you'll find much of that type of research that you mentioned. I think within Japan and within the marketplaces, they may look for better bargains of a particular product, but I don't think they would. Most Japanese consumers wouldn't even be comfortable enough going to an English language website to do that research. So, but the general calculations that you just went through are certainly going through their heads.
Great. A question came in is, where can we turn to identify tariffs for our specific products? And I'll answer this in that, as Conzo had alluded to earlier, there are an international matrix of harmonized codes, or it's often called the HS code. And you can look up what is your HS code, and that HS code will be basically the same as in Japan, so that a Japan customs agent looks up your HS code and says, oh, okay, this one is 7%, or this HS code actually has no tax on it. But that's clearly where you do it. And off the top of my head, I don't know that a website for looking up HS codes, but there's many. And then there's a government, US government website that is pretty common at Department of Commerce or the Department of Transportation. But it's really easy to find if you just Google HS codes.
Yeah, and can I add that I think, as American business people doing business with Japan, the free trade agreements between the US and Japan are seeing those tariffs in many cases go down or being eliminated.
Okay, here's a question that's come in. This is from Mark. If a Hawaii company had to just pick one, Rakuten or Amazon, what would they pick, in your opinion, at the beginning? It sounds to me like you were leaning towards Amazon.
Well, I would, but I have to, as you saw that one chart that showed which categories one was stronger in, I would start with your category. It could be that Amazon is great in that category, and you'd be able to do a good piece of business. But look, yes, in general, as I said earlier, getting set up on Amazon is easier. It's less involved. And but what I typically tell my clients is the amount of work to get on Rakuten and Amazon is much less than the incremental business that you'll get. So the longer you wait to get on Rakuten, for example, the more missed business opportunity you'll have. So if the point is, if you have the wherewithal, right? If you have $8,000 to get started instead of $3,000 to get started, I would say do both at the same time, or as long as because 80% of what goes on Rakuten will also be on Amazon. So once you set up on Amazon, the incremental work to get Rakuten up and running is not that significant. So that's kind of the checklist I go through with my clients. I'm almost like a medical practitioner asking a set of questions and trying to get to what is the best treatment. But I can tell you from personal experience, the majority of the clients I've worked with will launch on both at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Here's one I think better suited for Conzo. Knowing what you know about the Hawaii companies, and not all of them are the same, the products are different and the customers are typically different, but nonetheless, a company only has so much bandwidth. Should they be using in social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Line, or what have you? Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, a simple one would be demographics. If your customers are younger than 35, Instagram. If they're older than 35, Facebook. If they're in Japan, use Line.
Okay, great. One of the problems that we have, this question is, I think, for Conzo. One of the problems we have is that we have a lot of companies that want to do business in Japan. However, in Hawaii, these businesses do not have Japanese language capability, either spoken or written, to create social media messaging, either on Instagram or Line or what have you. How do you advise your clients to deal with that sort of thing? Are there services in Hawaii for simple Japanese translation of a couple sentences for social media, or can your company do this? How does that work?
Yes, for online translations, my company can do that. But for like social media to getting started, if it's a physical product, I recommend using like an influencer in Japan, and one of our sister companies in Japan handles this. But some of these Instagram influencers have about 500,000 followers. So what would happen is you go into contract with these influencers to help them promote your product. And since they're Japanese, they're going to be writing about your product in Japanese as a consumer standpoint. So that helps out a lot on social media. And not so much, physical posting of your own, but having those influencers do help, especially like in apparel or like jewelry or just beauty products. They're very popular in the female audience.
Okay, here's I'll leave this as the last question because it's kind of a big question. For the past nearly 2 years, we've had almost no tourism from Japan in Hawaii, whereas prior to that, we could have at any given time 100,000 people from Japan in the Hawaiian Islands at any given time, or more. And that really dried up almost overnight. A lot of companies were doing their marketing to the Japanese market based on visitors coming here. That will come back someday, but it's not tomorrow and it's not next month. It's maybe a year or more away for the kind of tourism coming back. So for companies like that, can you just each give your recommendation as to how to sort of get back into gear and marketing towards Japanese customers, but knowing that they're not going to be here in Hawaii, that this is all remote marketing, and 99% of it, I think, is digital marketing. So I'll leave it at that, and maybe you can each address that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Shall I go? Because that is
Sure.
a very, very topical question. And I can tell you, and actually, Rob, this is something you and I have talked about. We are actually progressing with Rakuten and with the various commercial sections of the embassies that are some of the embassies that are in Japan, the international embassies, including, I can tell you, the American embassy and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In fact, I did a presentation to them in early December, and that's actually what I wanted to show. If I can have the screen share again, Rob, just for a moment. I want to show you a program that we put together for South Australia. So the Australian government has, let's see, so the South Australian government has engaged BPI, working with Amazon, to put together what we're calling a product showcase. And I wanted to bring this up because I mentioned about ways to limit risk, limit costs, get into the marketplace successfully. And we really think this is probably the most successful way to do so. It's what we've done for South Australia, and we're ultimately planning to do with the US, is to create a product showcase of 10 to 15 merchants that are all coming together under one banner, in this case called the US Product Showcase. In Australia, it's called the Tasting South Australia Showcase. And we have numerous new to market companies coming in, sharing the cost of doing that and benefiting from a much larger marketing campaign that allows the merchants that are participating to really enjoy benefits that would go very far beyond what they would have if they were coming in as an independent merchant. And of course, the beauty of this is once they come in through this larger system, along with other merchants, they find out that their program is, their business is successful, they can set up their own independent brand storefront. So you can see this is an example. Korea did it, Italian embassy did it, and it really is a very interesting model. And you can see the kinds of, I'm done. That's all I want, really just wanted to touch on that for a moment. But the interesting thing is that countries, regions that have very unique and powerful brand imagery are perfect for this. So that's a long way of telling the story. But so instead of people going to Hawaii, now they can visit Hawaii on Rakuten, visit the Hawaii Product Showcase, get a little bit of experience. There's the music coming in, there's visuals from Hawaii, maybe even the governor of Hawaii has a message on there. And then within that, there's a number of companies that can be promoted. You want to buy, you want a taste of Hawaii, here you go. So I just thought it would be worthwhile to throw that out, Rob, because it is a virtual journey to a particular region and the foods and the flavors and the sounds of that particular region.
And I'm just curious, can the Rakuten showcase, can that have brief videos? Because as Konzo had said, that short videos are really an effective marketing tool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think our Hawaii companies have great backgrounds available to them with the ocean and what have you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the way the hierarchy architecture works is there's the brand page that could be all Hawaii: sustainability, natural living, culture, food, health. All of that gets covered in the kind of the brand, and then you go into kind of more of the individual brand, the companies, their merchants, their flavor of their brands. And then the the main hierarchy, the bottom of the pyramid, is all the products. And it's so intuitively powerful that it's really going to be a benefit to any country, any company or government that's putting this together.
Great. Okay, Konzo, do you have any last comments on this? What's your opinion about what can companies do now since there isn't tourism for the next year or so?
Well, what I would recommend is, people here in Hawaii, we know how strong the Hawaii brand is and how much Japanese market loves Hawaii. And even if you can't do the full translation, a full website, I would recommend you start off small. Have one social media page just for Japanese, or have one single page in Japanese, even if there is no e-commerce. And have somewhere where Japanese consumers can interact with you or ask questions, because I monitor keywords on a daily basis of what's happening in Japan right now. And Hawaii keywords are booming in Japan right now. Japanese are looking for Hawaii products all the time. And if you have a digital presence anywhere, that's a good way to start. And if you get interaction, then you can build on it. You can go to the next step.
Okay, great. Thank you. Before we wrap up, I just want to make sure I put up here again how attendees can contact you gentlemen. I will be sending out PDFs of your presentations to them, but just so they get a quick eye of your contact information. Here's Mark at his website, and then Konzo was here. So with that, let's wrap it up. We have recorded this session as we do all of them. It'll be up on the HPEC YouTube archive in about a week after some minor editing, and also on the DBET website, they'll have it on their archive as well. So I'd like to thank, of course, Jamie Lum from DBET for the funding that helps us put these programs together, and thank Mark Foti from Big Picture International in Tokyo, Konzo Nara from Imagine Web Creation and the I Do Web School here in Honolulu. It was a wonderful session. We look forward to hearing more from all of you in 2022. Our next webinar will be February 10th, and that'll be focused on Australia and New Zealand. We look forward to having all of our attendees at that again. So with that, again, my name is Rob Hack from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Aloha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.